Today I received a small box in the mail with something to repair. So let's open it up and see what I got. And this one's going to be a fairly long video, so you better grab yourself a coffee and let's get going. We have a camera. So let's see what's going on with this one. And for this one, I might even try my new Franken driver. You remember the little Sony that I had that had? Well, I've got two. This is the replacement one here. But I had the little wooden handle from my other one, and I thought, let's take the wooden handle off the screwdriver portion itself because I don't have a bit for it. And I used one of my Vessel drivers. The number 0 from this pack of Vessel. The silicone grip had gotten to the point where it was slipping every time I tried to turn it, so I just put it on the handle and glued it on. So now I've got two of them. This one's a 00, this one's a 0. Just some JB Weld. What I did is I built up the actual shank here because it's smaller. So I put some heat shrink tubing around to build it up to make it approximately the same size as the inside diameter of the wooden handle, and then placed it on there and secured it in place with some JB Weld, which is almost completely set up. It'll be set up by the time I get into this camera. But first things first, let's put down our protective mat first on this one, and then we'll get into this one and see what is causing the problem. Usually what causes problems like this is the take-up spool is not turning correctly. So first things first, let's open the cassette compartment. We'll remove the cassette compartment itself so that I can observe if the tape is turning. Put it in playback mode. And open the cassette compartment. On these ones, the cassette compartment is held closed by a couple of little tabs, which we just have to release and it will pop open. There's two little tabs here on either side. You just lift them up and the cassette compartment will pop off. And we just open up the hand grip here to make it a little bit easier to access. The two little plastic clips that I have to release. There's one here. We just pull it down a bit and it will pop out, and then the same with on this one over here. And you can usually do it with your fingers or a screwdriver, but I find the fingers are just as easy. I'm just doing a visual inspection. First thing I want to do is I want to look at the condition of the flex cable. On this chassis, there was a big issue with the flex cable getting cut by the catch. So what we're looking for is we're looking to see if there's a scratch right down in here. And I don't see it on camera, so it's probably okay. What caused it was on some of these machines there was a sharp burr on the bottom of this catch, right? And when the catch latched the cover down, it would scratch, and it would usually put a cut in here. And I don't see one. I'm just going to look at it with some optical instrumentation and see if there's any evidence that it has been damaged. This may be our problem. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. If I throw the light on there, you might see it right below. Give me something to point with. Right below this plastic catch, right here. If you look right down where I'm pointing with the screwdriver right now, take a look right down there. It looks like there might be what resembles a scratch. You can see it when I light it. You see that right there where I'm pointing the light? It looks like a scratch has severed the traces, and that is a common problem on these. That there's a burr on the bottom of that catch, and it cuts through the trace, and this trace happens to go to the rotation sensor to detect that the take-up is turning. And when that gets severed, basically you got to change the entire transfer. You got to change this chassis. I had to do it on my TRV-110. I did it on mine years ago, but that's what happened. Was that got cut, and it looks like right there you can see it at that angle. If you look right here, I'll see if I can point it out. Right there is where it's scratched. You can see it. It's tough to see. I use a magnifying glass, and with my magnifying glass I can see that there's a scratch right there. Now, whether I'm going to be able to repair that or not, that is going to be tricky, because unfortunately it's what's going to pass the signals from the take-up spool to the microprocessor, and it shuts down. So what happens is when I press play, the tape will turn, right? So there's no mechanical problem, but what will happen is it will shut down after a couple seconds. And it should shut down right about now. Usually go about 3 to 4 seconds. And of course it's going to make a liar out of me now. And of course it's playing. The tape is playing. But that's usually what happens. It's making a connection right now at this point in time. But when you go on fast forward or play, now it could be that it may be damaged and not severed. It might be a mechanical problem still, because I heard some noise there when I went into fast forward. Take a listen. So we may have a mechanical problem on this one. Let's tear it down for a mechanical problem, and I'll certainly address that catch that has a sharp burr on it to prevent it from damaging it in the future if it hasn't cut all the way through. You can certainly see the scratch when I zoomed in here. You can certainly see the scratch. It may not be all the way through, but it certainly is. It is cutting, as you can see right there. Clear as day. You can see where the scratch has started, and it's caused by the bottom of this catch. Is sharp. It's got a sharp edge on it. That was a well-known issue on these B mechanism cameras. It happened on my DCR TRV-110. If you go back and look at that video, I did it probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago now, but I did a 3-part video, and one of them was actually changing the entire mechanism because of that problem. I got a donor camera, pulled it out of a donor camera to repair it. If you're wondering where would one go about getting one, well, you have to get one from an old camcorder. If you look at this one here, you'll see that this one has no indication of any scratching. You see, there's no scratches on here whatsoever. This, of course, chassis came from, if you remember a few videos back where I had that video Walkman that had a bad head, and the client got a camcorder, an old digital camcorder, digital 8 camcorder, brought it to me to remove the head drum out of and fix his video Walkman. So he left me with the rest of the guts. This one here, of course, the mechanism itself, somebody tried to take a tape out of it themselves. The original owner of the camcorder, I guess, wanted to get their home porn tape out, so they completely destroyed the camera trying to take the tape out. I don't know whether it was home porn or not. I never saw the tape, but I did get the tape out of it. And it was another fellow that does archiving, and I got the tape out for him and handed him the tape, and then we pulled the head drum out of this to fix his, and I hung on to this for spare parts. So I do have the lower chassis, which is the basket that lifts here, because what's mangled on this is the upper chassis is mangled. But if need be, I do have one. But I think this one here, it might be a mechanical problem just from the way it's sounding. But certainly there is a scratch on that flexible cable, and what that does is that passes the signals that go from the rotation sensor, and also of course applies power for the LED tape end sensor, and the tape end sensors are also on here as well. So the tape end sensors, the rotation sensors, they're all passed down this connector, this connection that goes along here and ends up right here on this connector that goes to the main board. Anyway, the very fact that this one here is not going into shutdown now, and it has that sound coming from the mechanism, makes me believe that maybe we may have a mechanical problem. We'll just test it a couple more times here. And I'll try a couple of other different tapes on it as well. See, it's playing. And if I plug it into my monitor, I should have a picture. Well, I have sort of a picture. The heads must be clogged up. I've got a portion of a picture. This is what I've got. A clogged head. And the viewfinder on the side of the camera, it looks okay, but on the TV it looks like garbage. I'll try a different tape and see if it's still making that noise when I go to fast forward. And we have a dirty head, of course. Our clogged head. We'll have to address that. But my concern was when I was in fast forward, it made an odd noise. So let's just take a listen. Well, now it's sounding okay. But we have no picture. If I show you guys the picture, it's just snow, or half snow, so we need to address that problem first of all. And that requires disassembling the camera, even if it's just to clean the head. I do want to take care of that burr that is going to, if it hasn't already damaged that flex cable, it will cut it for sure, because you can see it's already starting to scratch. So let's tear this camera down. I am using the new driver that I just kind of fabricated today. Of course, I could also use this one if the battery's any good. Battery might be dead on this. I haven't used it for a while. But let's see. Battery's dead. I guess I can't use that one. I'll have to throw it on charge. Haven't used that one for a few weeks. Probably a few months. And to fix that catch, I basically have to take the mechanism, take the basket out, and file down the burr. Because I'll try to get a close-up of it, but there'll be a sharp edge protruding down from the bottom of that foot, and that's what damaged these in the first place. It was a known issue, and I changed lots of chassis, lots of those BMEC chassis. A lot of them failed when they were under warranty, and some out of warranty. And the part itself was expensive when it failed out of warranty. It was like over $100 for that lower chassis. They wouldn't sell just the ribbon cable, believe it or not. You had to buy the entire piece from Sony as a chassis. I've never tried to repair a damaged ribbon because I've always had a chassis available to do the job right. It may be possible to repair it, but I say I've never tried because, well, as I say, we always had the repair part available to fix it. And when I was in the business, we would not try to. We would call that a Mickey Mouse repair. If the part was available, that would be a Mickey Mouse repair. It was always those type of repairs where you tried to Hail Mary and make something work for somebody. Those were always the ones that came back to bite you in the ass. So it was frowned on where I worked to do that. If I did something like that and it came back, I would get yelled at for even attempting to do it. because it just wouldn't be reliable, or we couldn't guarantee that it would continue to work. So I'm just going to disassemble the entire camera, take it right down to the chassis, and take care of the burr that's on the basket first to prevent any further problems from occurring. Take out the camera section. Okay, camera section's out of the way. I can lift out the circuit board next. Take out this one. Oh, someone's been into that screw. It's put in cross-threaded. We'll release these connectors. Always put a screwdriver in behind and kind of pinch so that when you pull the connector, you're not going to tear it, you're going to pull it evenly. And there'll be another clip over here I got to undo. And then the board should lift out. And there's one more down here. This is for the head. Again, it's always good to put your screwdriver below, pinch, and then you can pull it straight out without damaging. Okay, I may not even have to take off this board. I think I can just drop the chassis out. Quite often these screws come loose, and look at this one, they've come loose. Always good to check these screws here because these screws do work their way loose. That one was loose too, but that one was really loose. I've had these screws fall right out, and the whole mechanism is flopping free from the rest of the camera. You gotta take them apart and tighten them down. 3 screws. And then we can lift this out. That out of the way. Here's our good old mode switch down here. Usually you can clean these without taking them all apart. Usually get some cleaner into them and they'll be fine. Mode switches don't give a lot of trouble on these camcorders like they did on VCRs. As long as you load a tape on, unload a tape on a regular basis, you're generally okay. So to remove the mechanism, there's the basket. There's a cut washer here that we need to take off. Take this one off on this side. And we're going to release this ribbon cable from the back here. Just lift up on it so that it'll pop out of the little catches that hold it in place. I don't think I need to do that because I'm not going to take the whole mechanism apart. I'm just going to release the basket. We push the basket part of the way down so that we can clear the larger notch. Push that in like that. That'll release this side, and then the other side we've taken the cut washer off on, so it'll just pop out. Oh, I got to take out this. Got to remove this. This is the damper for the cassette compartment. I got to take that out first. So there's a clip that holds this in. There's a little white clip that comes out first, right there. You can see it. It's been so long since I've taken one of these things apart, I almost forget how to do it. So we got to pop that little white clip out. Like that. And then the damper can be pushed through and removed. And that does need to come off, otherwise you'll never get the basket apart. So take the tape damper out. Like that. Okay. And now we can push this mechanism down, which I've done. And on this side here, we can take this side out. It's held in place by, there's another little clip over here, but we can get around this, just lift it out like that. And then that whole mechanism just lifts out like that. Okay, so this is the piece that's got the sharp edge on it, the catch right here. This catch is where, let's see, this one or this one, but there should be a burr on here. We should be able to see it. It's this foot here, I think. Anyway, let me just take a close look at it. We'll file it down a bit so that it doesn't damage this any more than it is already. If you look closely, there's an edge right on here. My screwdriver is catching up. See that? There's a little edge right there. And that little edge is sharp, razor sharp. And that's what slices that as it makes contact with it. Every time you open and every time you load a cassette, that does that. That's what locks it shut. This is the catch that locks the tape compartment in place. When you hit eject, it pulls it back like that to open. This rides down and drops the catch. This one activates a switch that tells the system that the cassette compartment is closed. This one here is the catch, and this is the back side here. This is where the sharp edge is. So it might be hard to see on camera, but it's right there. I can catch the screwdriver on it. So we're going to take this and just file this down a bit. The other part of that lever, of course, pushes the switch so that when you close the cassette compartment, it operates that switch. So if you put a tape in and it doesn't go down, usually it's the switch is dirty. You gotta clean the little switch that's underneath here. There's a little switch that gets activated. You can see that's a little pin switch right in there. It gets activated by that lever. Usually if you just do this enough times, it will clean it. But I wonder if we can see this now that this compartment's out. See the damage that's on here, the damage that started to occur. You can see it right there. You see the scratch? Right where I'm pointing with my finger. There's a scratch on there. And once that gets totally severed, you'll have a deck that shuts down after a few seconds. Now I've thought about trying to scratch through that and bridge it with a wire, and that might be a way of doing it. If it's damaged, that might be a way of fixing it. The one that I had a much more prominent cut. You could see it cut right through. This one's just starting to scratch. Anyway, I want to take a look underneath the cassette mechanism itself. So we'll remove these screws. I want to look to see if there's any evidence that there's any grit or anything that's in the gears that would cause it to stop turning, and it may have cleared itself up. All it takes is 1 grain of sand, which believe it or not happens on camcorders. Gee, I wonder how that ever happens. No one ever thought of taking their camera to the beach, right? But we get grains of sand in the gears that can cause problems. And in the tooth belt too. See, now you can see that switch better with the cover off. You see, this is the little switch right here. That's the switch there that activates when the cassette is in. That switch goes dirty, and if that switch gets dirty, you close the cassette down, it won't do anything. It'll just sit there. You can open it, but it won't. It'll just sit open if that goes bad. That switch, and they do go bad. I just want to look to see if there's any indication that there's been ever anything in these gears, any grains of sand or anything that may have gotten into the gear and caused it to jam. Same goes for under the What is that? Is that a grain of sand? It looks like it might be a grain of sand. I thought I saw something in here in the teeth. Yeah, there's a grain of sand. Looks like right in the teeth of this gear. Right down, you can see it. Is that a grain of sand? There we go. Looked like a grain of sand in that teeth of the gear. I want to look at the ones underneath as well. Underneath the, I'm going to pull off the hub just to look underneath where this meshes. Got to release these catches here to open it up or to lift it. There we go. Now we can lift this off. Just want to inspect underneath here. See, there's your Hall effect sensor right there. So that Hall sensor is what provides a signal, and if we trace these back, we'll see that these signals go right through here. So from here, one's power and the other one's a signal off of it, and if we trace them, it goes along like this. It goes right through those ones where that scratch is right there. And that's what happens. That Hall sensor gets disconnected from the rest of the world. A little bit of debris in those gears, a couple of the teeth. Is the one-way clutch. So what this does is when the take-up spool is turning in the forward direction, there's no resistance, but when it goes into the reverse direction, this clutch will lock in place and it will stop the bottom hub from turning. It's not locking right now. This is supposed to kick in like this to stop it from turning. This clutch is kind of sticking a bit. There we go. That's how it's supposed to work, you see. So what happens when it rolls back like this and it locks in place, it just locks the bottom of the gear here, the bottom portion of the gear, which adds a little bit of resistance just to provide some tension on the tape as it's going backwards so that it doesn't get wound up around the pinch roller. You need to have a bit of tension on, so when you're in reverse, it adds a little bit of back tension, but in forward it releases it completely. And that's working like it's supposed to. In forward, of course, you got your back tension from this back tension regulator arm over here, which is a metal band that goes around this and keeps the tension constant when it's in the play mode. And in reverse, it doesn't matter. It actually mechanically moves the back tension arm back a bit so that it can go into the reverse mode. Anyway, that looks okay down there. Let's just put the mechanism back in position. The subfloor, as they call it. Put the subfloor back in. Put the screws in to hold it in place, and then we'll deal with that burr that's on the bottom of the cassette housing. That just kind of rolls into position, as you saw, and then this goes underneath here. Like that. That's what holds that in place. Okay, let's deal with the little sharp burr on here. I'm just going to get a small file and file that down. To reshape this, we'll use the good old Dremel tool. Not going super fast, of course, just enough to take the edge off this. And reshape it ever so slightly so that it's not going to cut into that. We're just going to take a little bit of meat off of here. So I've taken the edge off of it. I actually reduced the size of it a little bit, filed it down just a bit, so that it's not quite as deep as it was before, but there's still enough meat on here to latch the door shut, because it's this edge here that holds the door shut, not this side. So this way here, at least it won't or shouldn't damage the mechanism anymore, the lower part of this transport. The flexible PC cable that is always the concern. Push that in and this should lift up. You can lift this piece right up so we can inspect the flexible cable a little more here now that it's a little more exposed. I think we're okay. I think that was just dirt on there from, it certainly was making contact, that's for sure, with the flexible cable. That catch was certainly was making contact, but it doesn't look like it's severed. If we look closely, remember I showed you before, it looked like it was a distinct scratch. That might have just been some dirt on there, because I don't see that now. Look at it with my magnifiers and see. Oh yeah, I think we're okay. I can still see where it was making contact. Whoops. Right on the bottom here. But I don't think it's cut through. Okay, where it was making contact was right, pointed out, right there. That's where it was making contact. I don't think it's cut. It's really hard to tell. Usually when it's cut, it's very obvious. But it doesn't look like it's cut through. But it certainly was making contact right there. I can see it. Where it was rubbing. So if it hadn't cut through yet, it would have. It's so hard to see because it could still be a microscopic trace that's severed. These are so fragile, these flexible PCs, and the copper traces on them are just paper thin, right? But it doesn't look like it. Normally when it's damaged, you can see it. You can see it. There's a definite groove in it. I just see it. Looks like it's been rubbed, but it doesn't look like it doesn't look like there's a groove cut in it. If I can get my camera in any closer than that without it going out of focus. But certainly, you can certainly see where it's. There's probably the best angle right there. Right there. You can certainly see where it's touched it, but it may not be damaged. That's the hope, that it's okay. And that the reason it was shutting down was that the reel was sticking. Put this piece back in place. This just slips in here like this and slides in place, and the bottom corner of it goes down into a hole in the chassis down here. Like that. That's what holds that in place. Now in the event that you have to change the chassis on these, I'm not going to pull the chassis, but in the event that you do need to change the chassis, you remove this E-clip over here, and there's 2 screws that hold the chassis in place, and then the whole chassis with the guides and everything intact will lift off for exchanging it. Put the front basket back in. It's clipped in place. There's a couple clips that go through on the inside here, these 2 little pins going through these holes on the side of the chassis here, and these little catches go underneath the clips on the side. So it goes in quite easy. You just line up the holes with the pins on either side. Like that, and like this one. And then when you turn it down, and then as you push the chassis down, it will lock itself in place. So just got to get these 2 pins lined up with the holes in the lower chassis, like that. And then when you turn it, bring it forward, it will lock into place. Well, sort of. You gotta be in a little more like this to do it. This is where having it on a rubber mat is also problematic, because you don't want to drag this thing along. You could tear these connectors. If it's on a wooden bench, that's not going to happen. Like that, and then close down. Bring it closed. This other side has to line up with the, there we go. Now we're in place, so we can close it down. I can put my cut washer back on this side to hold this side of the mechanism together. And then on the other side, we've got the door damper that holds it in place with the little white clip that holds that in place. So let's open the compartment again by releasing the spring. Which one is it? It's this one here, right? Like that. Put our door damper in place. This little lever has to fit into, there's a little pin right there. That little lever fits onto the pin, over that pin, and then the catch just goes in like that, and the bottom clip will pop in. Like that. You'll find that this is a groove in the damper assembly that the part of the cassette housing rides up and down in this groove. So once that's in place, then I can put the little white stopper back in. Little white stopper here. Goes in like that, and it'll lock in place. That prevents the damper from coming disconnected. Now the mechanism is back together. It will lock in place, and that little foot now is a little bit higher up, so it's not going to make contact with the flexible cable, because I took off probably a 1/2 millimeter. I know I make it look easy when I take apart one of these mechanisms, but remember, I did this work for 20 years, so I'm kind of an expert on disassembly and reassembly of these small mechanisms because I did so many of them when I was in the business. That locks in place like that. All right, now I can put the base chassis on. The base chassis sits in place like this with its 3 screws that, as I say, all have a tendency to work their way loose on their own. That's just something that they do on these ones. I can get rid of this extra light. I don't need it now. Next comes the main board. main board sits in like this. And we can put all the edge connectors back into their appropriate plugs. By the way, these things here,
They're the gyros for the steady
this
shot.
board here. This is the steady shot board. This is for the jacks, the audio video outputs. Locks in place like that. There's a catch up here that locks into place to hold the camera section in, at least part of the camera section, and then the screws go in to hold the camera assembly in. Almost looks bent there, doesn't it? Lens control. And the CCD pickup. Okay, that part's done. Almost ready for putting power to it and testing it, which we can do. I think we can do this one at a part. Pretty sure the, oh, I gotta plug the front panel, of course, in for the power switch. So our power switch is on here. So it's going to plug this connector in, and then we can test the camera out with it apart. Sort of apart. And make sure that it plays, because we weren't able to play back before. We had a head clog. It looked like a head clog. Could be something else, but it sure looked like the heads were clogged. Get this edge connector in, or this flexible cable in. Like that. And close it up. Okay, at this point the camera can actually be powered up, but I'm going to put a camera into its case like that, so that I can hook up the power adapter, not have to rely on using leads. Won't have any sound on it at this point because I don't have the audio board. I don't think there'll be sound. Pretty sure there's no sound on this one without the audio board. There might be. This might just be that's just the mic preamp. So let's see if I get a picture. I still have snow, but we'll try cleaning the head with the good old fingernail trick. Getting better. Now we got a picture. It's working now. Is there sound? Yes, we have sound. I'm going to let this one play. And before I put it together, I'm going to let it play this whole tape through end to end. We'll run this through a few times just to verify that there's no issues with it. Plus the fact that my phone's been ringing off the hook. I can hear the phone inside in the office ringing. And I was kind of busy, so I'll let it ring. This one though looks to be working okay now. It's not stopping. Well, this has been playing now for almost the entire tape. No problems whatsoever, as you can see. We're now almost at the end of the tape. So I think it's time I rewind this tape and we can reassemble this one. Oh, I see something that's going on here. Let's check out the way that the tape is running on the pinch roller here. Maybe this is where our problem is. Take a look at the tape when I go. Look at the tape, it's starting to curl. Even though it's playing fine. I wonder if that's why it was acting up. Watch what happens when I go into reverse. You know what? I think this guide is bent. That's what the problem is on this camera. This guide over here. Look at the angle that this guide is. That guide is twisted. See that? This is bent. This should be straight. Watch what happens when I go into reverse. Watch the tape right here. That guide is bent. More than likely what happened is the tape got stuck on it and the tape was reefed on and it twisted the guide back. You can see it's got a twist in it. So let's just straighten this guide a little bit. I don't have a guide to replace it with. Actually, I probably do. But let's just see if I can straighten this guide by just twisting the metal back straight. They're very, very thin, the tape guides on these cameras. Okay, I may have gone a little too far. It might be a little bit too much this way now, right? It's not quite straight, but I bet you it's going to work better than it was before. I'll go into reverse search. It might start to curl the other direction this time. Yeah, so now it's going to curl the other way, so I just got to try to straighten this up just a little bit better. Okay, just going to try and bend this straight, bend it straight. Looks like it's still got a bit of a twist in it. Okay, now the guide's a little straighter. Let's just see what happens when I go into reverse. You can see the tape is running fairly smooth now. I go into reverse or fast rewind now. That's a little better. Let's go back to my other tape. This is a tape this is like my worst test tape that I've got. This is a tape I've had playing on this all day. We'll rewind this tape. I think the guide was a little bit twisted there. That was one of the reasons it was acting up. As you can see, now it's rewinding nicely. So I'm going to rewind this tape back, let it play from the beginning again. This may have been the cause of it shutting down. The tape was binding. I didn't notice it before. But the tape was maybe riding up on the guide and getting stuck, stopping the reel from turning. Of course, it didn't do it for me at first. I didn't notice this until I actually went to rewind the tape, and when I went to rewind the tape, that's when I noticed that the tape was running up between the capstan and the pinch roller, and I noticed that this guide was bent, which generally happens if a tape gets stuck and someone reefs on the tape and pulls it. They bend that guide because it's so thin. These mechanisms were not my favorite mechanism. I like the A mechanism much better. The A mechanism was used on cameras such as the VX3. Used the A mechanism. That series of camera. The there was a mechanism prior to that that was more problematic, and that was used in like the F40 and F30 series. That was the mechanism that did not lift up. The camera went in the back and just closed down. Like it went in this way. Like this tape slid in this way. In other words, the tape sat vertical instead of horizontal. Those ones, mechanisms were good, but they had a lot of capacitor issues on them. The A mechanism was good. Did not have a lot of problems. The B mechanism, which was this one, they went to much simpler mechanisms. If you look at the guide posts on this, for example, there's no angle posts, right? It's just the guides, right? There's no angle posts. You look at the A mechanism actually has not only the adjustable guide, but it also has the steel pin, right? The angle post. And then the mechanism that followed this one was I call it the bottom feeder. So that was the mechanism that the tape went in on the bottom. But this is running nicely now on rewind. I'm just going to let this tape play through a couple times, and then we'll do a test recording. Whenever you work on the mechanisms like this, you want to do several passes in all modes. So play, rewind, fast forward, reverse search, forward search. It's always a good idea just to run the tape through a few times and just observe how the tape is running. Make sure it's not riding up or down on any of the guides, or especially in this section here between the pinch roller and the capstan shaft. As you know, 8mm tapes, they use the pinch roller to shuttle the tape regardless whether you're in play or record, fast forward, or rewind. It's always pulled through by the pinch roller. So it's critically important that these guides themselves are straight, not bent, not twisted in any way, and also that that back tension brake at the back that we looked at is functional, because if the tension comes off of this supply spool, well, it becomes a supply spool when you're rewinding. So if the take-up spool, when it's in the reverse, if the tension comes off that, then you end up with tape that's sloppy here. There's no tension to hold the tape around this guide correctly, and then you'll end up with the tape getting crunched. So one of the symptoms, if you have one of these B mechanism camcorders and the complaint is the tape is damaged on rewind, it's either that guide or that gear underneath here, the one that I don't think we can see it now, but I'll see if we can. Can we see it? No, we can't. But it's the gear that is in the back here that has the little lock on it. So when it's going forward, it freewheels, and then when it's going in the reverse direction, it locks the bottom of the hub so that the clutch maintains adequate torque or back tension. So now I'm going to run the tape forward from beginning to end, and then rewind it again, and then I'll play it through from beginning to end. So we'll go to fast forward now, just to make sure that everything runs through as it should. And then once it finishes its fast forward cycle, I'm going to rewind it back to the beginning, and I'm going to play it again from end to end and verify that everything's playing properly. And if it is, then we'll do a test recording and make sure that the camera records and plays, and then I can close this one up and be fairly satisfied that I found the problem. Okay, and in this case the problem was that guide. I'm sure that was the entire problem all along, was this guide was bent. Although we did take the mechanism apart just to examine the clutch, which looks okay. I took care of the burr that was on the catch, which would have caused a problem because you can see where it has been rubbing on the flexible connection. It hasn't cut through yet, which is good, because that spells disaster for these. You have to change that chassis or attempt to repair the flex. So I've never succeeded in repairing one, although I've only tried doing it once, and it was on a garbage camera. But I would not recommend that. If you have to do it, I guess you have to do it, but because these parts are getting scarce. But it's best to try to find a replacement chassis, just because, as I say, when I tried it before, it did not last. It's the same as the flex cable that's on some camcorders that have the buttons on the lid that flips open, and they have a little flex cable that goes up and down the side, and they always break. Try to repair them. Good luck. Good chance that they won't work, or if they do, it'd be a very short-lived repair, because the constant flexing will break whatever you try to do to fix it. It will break. And we'll rewind it again. Then I'm going to let it play end to end, and then we'll do a test recording. Okay, it's gone through another full play cycle end to end. Now it's time to start reassembling the camera, and then I will do a test recording once I get the cabinet assembled. These go together fairly easily. Like that. And then the front. So of course the trick to doing this is you got to hold both the pieces come off the back and the edge connector, or the flex cable, to hold them together, and then really work at it. It takes a few minutes to get these back together, so when they come apart like that, it's kind of a pain, but they will go back together if you're careful, and usually they will work. We'll find out pretty quick if I have sound when I get this back together. Remember I said I thought this looked like it was bent? It's not. It just looked that way. The holes do line up. There we go. That's back together. Throw a few screws in it to hold the camera together so I can test it. Pretty happy with how the screwdriver turned out now that it's all set up. It actually, I think it's almost as good as this one, and it's one size bigger. So here's the original Sony screwdriver. Screws fit perfectly on it. No problem. And here's my rebuilt Sony screwdriver. Every bit as good. That big wooden handle makes all the difference in the world. And no, I'm not going to sell one. I can just see now I'll be getting hundreds of requests of people wanting to buy my spare. No, not for sale. But I guarantee you this one here is going to be 100 times stronger than this, because this little shank, it breaks. As I say, this one got broken. The original one got broken when my daughter pried out some batteries, and it's a little bit longer. The shank's a little bit longer than this one, but I think I got the geometry pretty close for the handles. What makes these so great is when you're screwing them in, you got the pivot hinge here, which makes it easy to screw things in. Well, this is the same. You can hang on to it and drive the screws in. So yeah, I think that yeah, this one that I've made up is going to be every bit as good as the original. But if you're looking for a set of these screwdrivers, there are a set of them on these ones. This is the ones you want. They're Vessel TD56S. And the size, I've gone over this before, but the size that's actually the same as the Sony is a 00. That's the size that's the same as the Sony. As I say, and it's not a Philips, it's a JIS, Japanese bit. So these are made in Japan. But this is a good set. The only thing that I don't like about it is these little rubber grips. Say the yellow one that came on this one, which now will no longer fit, obviously, in its case. But the this one here was kind of like an off yellow, like a mustard color. It slipped. It slipped far too easy. You'd be driving a screw in and this thing would slip down because these do move. And once they start to slip, they lose their grip on the handle, and then then they really, every time you go to use them, they're slipping around. So that's the thing I didn't like about these, and that's the reason I wanted to do this, glue the wooden handle on, because this is the one I use most. Anyway, get a few more screws in here and then I'll test it out. Even the plastic hand strap hasn't started to deteriorate. Like some of them had like a rubberized coating on them that just started to fall apart. This is vinyl, so it's in good shape. I guess we'll find out in a minute if the microphone works. I guess that answers that question. Okay, I'll make a recording and record some shots on my bench. Zoom out, zoom in. Yeah, that works. Here's my message, my PayPal message for those bandits at PayPal. Okay, this has been recording here for a few minutes. We'll rewind this tape and make sure that it plays. Rewind. There we go, playback. You hear me bitching about playback.
This year they've started with...
So there's playback, so we know that it records. It records sound, it records picture. Actually looks good. Let's finish up the repair. So there you have it. This one's now fixed. I've been working on this one for a couple of hours today. It's about the only thing I've got done all day is this thing. Remove the tape door. Very easy for these ones to go on. They're held in place with plastic clips, which you have to be careful not to break these taking them off. But to put the door on, it's real simple. You just hook the door into the top here, like that, and then just not like that. Hook the door into the top, and then just squeeze it shut, and it'll snap in place. Just like that, and on the side like that. There we go. This one's done. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.